Somewhere between imagination and reality, there exists a land of ancient forests and volcanic peaks, a land where rivers carve through mountains older than memory, a land so extraordinary that when filmmakers searched the entire planet for Middle-earth, they found it waiting at the bottom of the world. New Zealand. Over 150 locations across 2 islands brought Tolkien's vision to life. But these places are not movie sets frozen in time. They are living, breathing landscapes that you can walk through today. Mountains you can climb, forests you can wander, rivers you can follow. This is not a story about films. This is a journey through the real Middle-earth. From the elven sanctuary hidden in ancient rainforest to the volcanic slopes of Mount Doom. From the paths where the dead still seem to walk to the golden hills of the Shire, we will travel from the North Island to the south, following the footsteps of hobbits, wizards, and kings. What you are about to witness will transform how you see New Zealand forever. The beauty of Middle-earth is waiting. Hidden within ancient rainforest, just 40 minutes from New Zealand's capital, lies a place so enchanted that filmmakers chose it to represent the last homely house east of the sea. Rivendell. Kaitoke Regional Park covers nearly 3,000 hectares in the foothills of the Tongariro range. Centuries-old Rimu and Rata trees tower above, their canopy filtering light into something almost supernatural. The air here carries a different weight. Quieter, older, the kind of stillness that makes you lower your voice without knowing why. Peter Jackson's location scouts understood immediately. This forest already felt elven. The Hutt River flows through the park with crystal clarity. Its waters became the elven streams of Rivendell itself. The refuge at the end of the chase, the exact grassy clearing where the Fellowship gathered before Elrond still exists, where Frodo recovered from the Morgul blade, where Aragorn and Arwen shared their iconic kiss beneath ancient branches. None of the elaborate structures remain. The elegant balconies and curved architecture existed only during filming, but the forest that made Rivendell magical never left. Today, visitors follow a short walking track to the filming location. Information panels reveal where each scene was captured. A reconstructed elven archway marks the entrance, a perfect spot for photographs. But the true magic requires no reconstruction. Stand among these trees as late afternoon light streams through the canopy. Listen to the river moving over smooth stones. Watch fantails dart between branches while Tawhai sing from hidden perches. You will understand why this place was chosen. The Department of Conservation maintains the park beautifully. Walking tracks range from easy strolls to challenging climbs. Swimming holes dot the river. Camping facilities welcome overnight visitors. Rivendell offered sanctuary to those fleeing darkness. Kaitoke Regional Park offers something similar. A place where the modern world fades, where imagination and nature merge into something timeless. But if Rivendell offered sanctuary from darkness, our next destination embraced it entirely, where the light fades and shadows take form into something ancient and unsettling. Over 120,000 years of erosion carved something from nightmares into the Wairarapa coastline, When Peter Jackson needed a gateway to the underworld, nature had already built one. The Putangirua pinnacles rise like skeletal fingers from the earth. Towers of ancient gravel, some reaching 50 meters high, stand in silent formation along a narrow valley. Geologists call them hoodoos, formations created when softer sediment washes away, leaving harder rock standing like monuments to time itself. In Return of the King, this became the Dimholt Road, the path Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli rode toward the army of the dead. No digital enhancement was needed. The location was already terrifying. The journey to the Pinnacles begins at a small car park off Cape Palliser Road, about an hour's drive from Martinborough. From there, the track follows Putangirua stream through a riverbed of smooth stones and fine sand. For the first 15 minutes, the landscape feels ordinary. Then the valley narrows. The pinnacles emerge slowly at first, small formations on either side, but as you venture deeper, they grow taller, more imposing. The valley walls close in. Sound behaves strangely here. Voices echo. Footsteps seem to multiply. Even on bright days, shadows dominate. Filmmakers took extraordinary care during production. Horses used in the scenes were fed specially prepared weed-free fodder. Every precaution was taken to leave no trace on this fragile landscape. The Department of Conservation maintains walking tracks through the reserve. A loop track climbs to a ridge, offering panoramic views of the pinnacles below. The streambed route takes visitors directly into the formations themselves. Local Maori have long recognized this place as spiritually significant. The atmosphere demands respect. Visitors report feeling watched, feeling small, feeling that perhaps the army of the dead never truly left. From paths walked by the dead, we journey towards something entirely different, where shadow gives way to light, where ancient grey stone becomes luminous turquoise water, where New Zealand's highest peak rises into endless sky. Glacial flower. Millions of years of ice grinding stone into particles finer than dust. When sunlight strikes the water, something miraculous happens. The lake transforms into liquid turquoise, a color so vivid it appears painted rather than real. Lake Pukaki. New Zealand's highest mountain rises at the far shore. Aoraki Mount Cook stands 3,724 meters tall. Snow and ice cling to its slopes year-round. When Peter Jackson needed landscapes that conveyed the epic grandeur of Middle-earth, he found them here. This region appeared throughout both trilogies. The stunning aerial sequences in The Hobbit, where the company flees across mountain ranges, the approach to Rivendell, the forest slopes of the Misty Mountains, cameras mounted on helicopters swept across these peaks, capturing footage that made audiences forget they were watching a film. Lake Pukaki itself became Lake Town in The Hobbit, that floating city where Bilbo and the dwarves sought refuge. The glacial waters and surrounding peaks provided the backdrop for one of the Hobbit trilogy's most memorable locations. At nearby Braemar Station, production crews filmed the warg chase sequence. 10 helicopters transported cast and crew to a hilltop plateau overlooking the lake. The vast open terrain allowed for sweeping action shots that would have been impossible elsewhere. The lake stretches nearly 18 kilometers long, fed by the Tasman Glacier at its northern end. The Tasman is New Zealand's longest glacier at 29 kilometers. Meltwater carries that glacial flour downstream, creating the distinctive color that photographers travel thousands of kilometers to capture. State Highway 8 hugs the southern shore. Viewpoints allow visitors to pull over and absorb the panorama. On clear days, Aoraki dominates the horizon. Its reflection shimmers in the turquoise water. Clouds gather around the summit like a crown. The Hooker Valley track offers a deeper experience. Starting from Mount Cook village, the trail winds through alpine terrain for 90 minutes. Swing bridges cross milky rivers. The mountain grows larger with every step until it fills the entire sky. This is the Mackenzie Basin. Dark sky reserve status makes it one of the finest stargazing destinations on Earth. When night falls, the Milky Way blazes overhead with an intensity that city dwellers have never witnessed. But if these peaks represent Middle-earth's majesty, our next destination embodies its menace, where fire meets stone and shadow consumes everything. New Zealand's youngest volcano last erupted in 1975. Its perfect cone rises over 2,000 meters into clouds that gather like dark omens. When filmmakers searched for the fires of Mount Doom, they found it already smoldering. Mount Nauru Hoi dominates the landscape of Tongariro National Park. The symmetry is almost unnatural. A textbook volcanic cone rising from a plateau of jagged rock and barren tussock. Digital artists enhanced the peak with fire and smoke for the films, but the menacing silhouette required no alteration. This is dual World Heritage Territory, recognized for both natural and cultural significance. For the local people, these mountains hold deep spiritual importance. Mount Nauru Hoi is considered sacred. Visitors are asked to admire from below rather than climb to the summit. The Tongariro Alpine Crossing passes directly beneath the volcano, 19 kilometers of otherworldly terrain that consistently ranks among the world's greatest day hikes. Emerald lakes, ancient lava flows, steaming vents, red craters. The landscape shifts constantly, from alpine meadows to volcanic wasteland. Walking this track genuinely feels like entering Mordor. Filmmakers used multiple locations within the park. The Wakapapa ski area became Emin Muul, the razor-sharp maze where Frodo and Sam first encountered Gollum. The Rangkipo Desert hosted Orc army scenes. Hundreds of extras, including members of the New Zealand Army, marched across this barren plateau. The opening scene of Fellowship was filmed here as well, where Isildur cut the One Ring from Sauron's hand, that pivotal moment that set everything in motion. Protective measures during filming were extensive. Carpets were laid across sensitive areas. Equipment was carefully managed. The volcanic ecosystem remained protected. From Mordor's volcanic fury, we descend to something quieter, a hidden pool where a tortured creature hunted for fish, unaware that rangers watched from above. A 20-meter waterfall tumbles into darkness. The pool below sits perfectly still, reflecting ferns and ancient trees. Locals now call this place by another name entirely: Gollum's Pool. Tawhai Falls hides within Tongariro National Park, a short 10-minute walk from Wakapapa village. The track winds through native bush before emerging at a viewing platform overlooking the cascade. Most visitors come expecting a waterfall. They leave having walked into a film scene. In the Two Towers, this pool became the forbidden pool of Ithilien, where Gollum crept down the rocks in moonlight, catching fish while muttering to himself, where Faramir's rangers drew their bows, ready to shoot the creature they believed was a spy, where Frodo intervened, calling Gollum by his true name, Smeagol. The scene required intimacy, a single pool surrounded by darkness. The grandeur of epic battles gave way to quiet tension. The relationship between Frodo and Gollum deepened in this moment. Compassion met desperation beside still water. What makes Tawhai Falls remarkable is how little has changed. The rocks Gollum climbed still jut from the cliff face. The pool still catches the falling water with barely a ripple. Ferns still crowd the edges. The atmosphere of the scene remains intact. Visitors often time their arrival for early morning or late afternoon, when shadows lengthen and mist rises from the water, when imagination takes over and the pool feels genuinely forbidden. The Department of Conservation maintains the walking track beautifully. Information panels describe both the natural features and the filming history. The falls themselves are fed by mountain streams, clean enough to drink in most conditions. Gollum's Pool hides in shadow, but 300 kilometers south, a lonely hill rises from golden plains, waiting for a kingdom to be built upon it. A kingdom that took 11 months to construct and only 3 weeks to film. Location scouts discovered it by accident. A storm forced their helicopter off course over the Canterbury High Country. Below them, an isolated hill rose from sweeping plains, exactly as Tolkien had described 4 decades earlier. Mount Sunday. The hill stands alone in the upper Rangitata Valley, surrounded by rivers and framed by snow-capped peaks. Its sheer sides and flat summit made it instantly recognizable. This was Edoras, the Golden Hall of Meduseld, home of King Theoden and the Horse Lords of Rohan. Building here posed enormous challenges. No roads existed. The New Zealand Army constructed several hundred meters of access track just to reach the base. Extreme winds funnel through the valley, sometimes exceeding 100 kilometers per hour. Every structure had to be secured to bedrock with iron pegs. Construction took 11 months. The Golden Hall of Meduseld crowned the summit, overlooking a dozen smaller buildings, stables, a gatehouse, a wooden tower. The production invested extraordinary resources into a location that would appear on screen for mere minutes. Filming lasted just 3 weeks, then everything was removed. The Department of Conservation required the landscape be returned to its original state. Even the grass displaced during construction was stored and replanted. Today, only metal pegs embedded in rock hint at what once stood here. But visitors still come. The 90-minute walk from the car park crosses streams and farmland before reaching the base of Mount Sunday. The climb to the summit takes another 30 minutes. The views reward every step. "360-degree panoramas of the Southern Alps, the Rangitata River braiding through gravel flats below, wind that never stops moving. Stand here and imagine the Golden Hall above, Eowyn watching riders approach, the flag of Rohan tearing free and tumbling down the hillside, that unscripted moment the filmmakers kept, because it perfectly symbolized a kingdom in decline. Edoras watched over the plains of Rohan, but the greatest battle of the age was filmed on fields that stretched toward mountains even more dramatic. "32 days of filming, 1,700 people on set, the largest single battle location in the entire trilogy, and almost every extra came from one small New Zealand town. Twizel sits in the heart of the Mackenzie Basin, surrounded by tussock-covered plains and distant mountains, population roughly 1,200. When production required armies, the entire town answered the call. The Battle of the Pelennor Fields marks the climax of Return of the King. Sauron's forces assault Minas Tirith. Gondor's defenders struggle against overwhelming numbers. Then the Rohirrim arrive. 6,000 horsemen charging into the Orc legions in one of cinema's greatest cavalry sequences. The plains near Twizel provided the canvas, flat terrain stretching to distant mountain ranges, open space for horses to gallop, elevation that kept the air clear and the light sharp. Digital artists multiplied the extras into vast armies, but real riders performed the charges. Mount Cook, New Zealand's tallest peak, rises in the background. Lake Pukaki's impossibly turquoise waters lie just minutes away. The combination of alpine grandeur and sweeping grassland created exactly the epic scale the scene demanded. The filming location sits on private land, but tours can be arranged through operators in Twizel. Some visitors have organized reenactments, returning to the exact positions where the Rohirrim formed their lines. Nearby, Braemar Station hosted scenes from the Hobbit trilogy. The warg chase sequence that nearly killed Thorin's company was captured against these same mountain backdrops. The Mackenzie Basin offers more than Middle-earth memories. Dark sky reserves make it one of the world's finest stargazing destinations. Hiking trails wind through conservation land. The Church of the Good Shepherd at Lake Tekapo draws photographers from around the globe. The fields of battle give way to something gentler now, north of Queenstown. A valley exists with a name that sounds like fiction, but paradise is very real. Tolkien described Lothlórien as a golden forest, ethereal and enchanted, a realm where time moved differently and the outside world faded to memory. At the end of a gravel road marked paradise, filmmakers found exactly that. Glenorchy sits at the northern tip of Lake Wakatipu, 45 minutes from Queenstown. Beyond the small township, the road continues into territory that seems to belong to another age entirely. Beech forests glow amber and green depending on the season. Mountains rise on every side, rivers braid through glacial valleys. The beech forests along the road to paradise became Lothlórien, Galadriel's realm where the Fellowship rested after escaping Moria, where Frodo looked into the mirror of Galadriel, where the company received elven cloaks and gifts for their journey ahead. Further up the Dart Valley, the landscape transforms. Mountains become more jagged. Clouds gather more ominously. This became Isengard, the backdrop against which Saruman's tower rose, where Gandalf rode to confront his fellow wizard, only to discover betrayal. The contrast between locations captures something essential about Middle-earth, beauty and darkness existing side by side, sacred forests and industrial fortresses separated by merely a few kilometers. The 12-mile delta along the road between Queenstown and Glenorchy hosted another memorable scene, the Ithilien camp, where Sam cooked rabbits with potatoes, where the hobbits witnessed oliphants for the first time, where Gollum's corruption deepened. Mount Earnslaw dominates the view from Glenorchy's waterfront. This peak appeared in the opening sequence of The Two Towers. Its glaciated slopes glow pink and gold at sunset, reflecting perfectly in the still waters of Lake Wakatipu. Tours from Queenstown explore these locations with expert guides who share behind-the-scenes stories. Costumes and replica swords are often available for photographs. Paradise lives up to its name, but the mountains that frame it carry a different weight. The Remarkables earned their title long before cameras ever arrived. Actor Sean Astin sat against these mountains and felt he was actually living the books. The Remarkables did not need a fictional name. Reality was remarkable enough. Queenstown has earned its reputation as New Zealand's adventure capital. Bungee jumping, jet boats, skiing, skydiving. But before the adrenaline industry took hold, these landscapes already possessed something extraordinary. The Remarkables mountain range rises dramatically east of town. Sheer faces of rock and ice creating a wall that dominates the skyline. In the Fellowship of the Ring, these peaks became the backdrop for Dimrill Dale, the slopes the Fellowship descended after escaping the mines of Moria, where grief over Gandalf's fall nearly overwhelmed them. The Kawerau River Gorge served another iconic purpose, the approach to the Argonath, those massive statues of ancient kings flanking the river as the Fellowship paddled toward Amon Hen. The statues themselves were digital creations, but the gorge exists exactly as shown on screen. Sheer cliffs rising from churning water, a passage that feels appropriately monumental. Deer Park Heights, on the Crown Range Road above Queenstown, hosted multiple scenes. The warg attack that wounded Aragorn, wide shots establishing the vastness of Middle-earth. The property has since changed ownership, and access varies, but the landscapes remain. From the summit of the Crown Range, panoramic views stretch across what could only be described as Middle-earth made real. Mountain range after mountain range fading into blue distance, rivers threading through valleys, forests clinging to slopes. Queenstown offers countless ways to experience these landscapes. Helicopter tours provide aerial perspectives that match the sweeping shots from the films. Jet boat rides navigate the Seine rivers. Hiking trails penetrate wilderness areas where few visitors venture. The Remarkables tower above Queenstown, but following the rivers north, leads to canyons so dramatic they required no enhancement at all. The road to Skipper's Canyon is considered one of the most dangerous in New Zealand. Narrow, unpaved, carved into cliffsides above dizzying drops. But for Arwen, it was simply the path home. Skipper's Canyon lies north of Queenstown, accessed via a road that rental car companies specifically prohibit their vehicles from traveling. The track was built during the Gold Rush era, when miners needed access to claims along the Shotover River. Today, it serves adventurers seeking scenery that defies description. This canyon became the ford of Bruinen, the crossing where Arwen faced the 9 ringwraiths while carrying a wounded Frodo, where she commanded the waters to rise and sweep the Dark Riders away, where her defiance turned the tide of pursuit. The rushing waters and steep canyon walls created natural drama. Digital effects transformed the river into a charging flood, but the setting needed no enhancement. Skipper's Canyon already possessed enough power. Nearby, the Arrow River provided another crucial location. The ford of Bruinen was actually filmed at multiple sites, with the Arrow River contributing key shots. At Arrowtown, visitors can walk to the exact spots where cameras captured Arwen's desperate crossing. The town of Arrowtown itself deserves attention. Historic gold mining buildings line the main street. Autumn transforms the deciduous trees into spectacular gold and red. Chinese miners' cottages tell stories of multicultural history dating back over 150 years. Wilcox Green, near Arrowtown, became the Gladden Fields, where Isildur lost the ring after the original defeat of Sauron, where the ring waited in the riverbed for thousands of years until a hobbit named Smeagol discovered it. The Arrow River still yields gold for patient prospectors. Tours provide pans and instruction. Children and adults alike crouch at the water's edge, searching for flakes that might have witnessed ancient history. Arwen commanded the waters to rise, but further south, the rivers grow wider, the forests older, and the wilderness truly begins. The Fellowship paddled south from Lothlórien through waters so pristine, so untouched, that even Tolkien's imagination could not improve upon them. Fiordland National Park covers over 1 million hectares of wilderness in New Zealand's southwest corner. Mountains rise directly from fjords. Waterfalls plunge hundreds of meters into waters that have never known pollution. Forests here have grown undisturbed for thousands of years. The Waiau River, flowing between Te Anau and Manapuri, became the River Anduin. The opening aerial shot of the Fellowship of the Ring tracked along these forested banks. The sequence established the Fellowship's journey after leaving Lothlórien. Elven boats gliding through ancient waterways. Mavora Lakes lie north of Te Anau, accessible via gravel road. These twin lakes, surrounded by beech forest and backed by mountains, hosted crucial scenes where the Fellowship ended their river journey, where they beached the boats and continued on foot toward Mount Doom. The lakes remain beautifully undeveloped. Basic camping facilities exist, but no shops, no power, no distractions. Just water and forest and mountains, exactly as the Fellowship would have experienced. Fangorn Forest required something different, not pristine and beautiful, but tangled and mysterious. The production found it along Takaro Road near Te Anau. Both sides of the road were filmed as the ancient forest where trees walked and orcs feared to tread. Remote cameras were strung on wires between trees to capture the hobbits' escape. Merry and Pippin fleeing through undergrowth, while Treebeard watched from the shadows. Fiordland offers wilderness experiences found nowhere else on Earth. Milford Sound draws the crowds, but countless valleys and lakes remain virtually unvisited. Tramping tracks penetrate deep into country unchanged since the Ice Age. We have walked through elven realms and volcanic wastelands. We have stood where kings fell and armies clashed. But every great journey has a beginning, and every adventure deserves a homecoming. In 1998, Peter Jackson flew over farmland north of Matamata and saw something impossible: rolling green hills, a lake reflecting willow trees, an ancient oak on a ridge. The Shire already existed. It was simply waiting to be found. The Alexander family had farmed this land since 1978. Sheep and cattle grazed the same hills that would soon welcome the most famous hobbits in literary history. When location scouts arrived with photographs of what they needed, the family saw their own property staring back at them. Construction began in March 1999. The New Zealand Army built roads into the site. Workers carved hobbit holes into the hillsides. Gardens were planted a full year before filming. To allow proper growth, a 26-ton oak tree was transported from a nearby farm, rebuilt on the ridge above Bag End, and fitted with over 200,000 artificial leaves imported from Taiwan. Jackson wanted authenticity above all else. Weathering was applied to doors. Moss was encouraged on roofs. Vegetables grew in gardens. By the time cameras rolled, Hobbiton looked centuries old. The original set was partially dismantled after filming The Lord of the Rings, but when the Hobbit trilogy entered production, everything was rebuilt using permanent materials. This time, Hobbiton would remain. Today, 44 Hobbit holes dot the hillside. Each one features unique details, different colored doors, different garden styles, different scales to create the illusion of varying Hobbit heights on screen. The Green Dragon Inn serves specially brewed ale and cider. The party tree still spreads its branches where Bilbo gave his farewell speech. Tours guide visitors through the 12-acre site, sharing behind-the-scenes stories and film trivia. The attention to detail astounds even those who have never seen the movies. This is not a theme park. This is a place that feels genuinely inhabited. Half a million visitors have walked these paths since tours began. They come from every country, speaking dozens of languages, united by affection for a story about small people doing great things. There and back again. From the sanctuary of Rivendell to the peace of the Shire, from volcanic wastelands to golden forests, from paths walked by the dead to fields where the living fought for everything they loved. Every location we have witnessed proves something remarkable. Middle-earth was never just imagination. It was always here, waiting in the mountains and forests and rivers of New Zealand, waiting for the right storyteller to reveal it to the world. Peter Jackson did not create these landscapes. He recognized them. He understood that Tolkien's vision had somehow manifested at the bottom of the world millions of years before anyone thought to write it down. New Zealand offers endless wonders beyond these filming locations, but for those who grew up dreaming of Middle-earth, these places carry special weight, standing where Gandalf fell, walking where Frodo stumbled, breathing air that elves might have breathed. The boundaries between fiction and reality blur here, and perhaps that is exactly as it should be. The great stories never really end. They echo forward through time, finding new hearts to inspire, new dreamers to motivate, new travelers to guide toward distant shores. Your journey through Middle-earth does not have to remain on screen. The roads are open, the paths are waiting. The beauty of Middle-earth is calling. All you have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to you.